Officer, before you tighten those cuffs, you need to understand that midnight is going to change your life. Maya Brooks spoke without raising her voice, even as Officer Ryan Keller guided her hand behind her back beside pump number 6 at the Red Hollow gas station. Rain tapped against the metal canopy, soft but steady, while red and blue patrol lights spilled across the wet pavement in restless waves. 20 feet away, Naomi Carter stood beside their faded gray sedan with Officer Daniel Price watching her closely. The digital clock inside the convenience store read 11:57 p.m. 3 minutes remained before the man they had spent 8 months tracking was scheduled to arrive. 3 minutes before a federal sting operation was supposed to close around Victor Hale and a network he had built beneath the appearance of an ordinary roadside business. Keller knew none of that. He saw 2 young black women beside an expensive SUV that did not belong to them, a heavy canvas bag resting near Naomi's feet, and silence where he expected fear. To him, the story was already written. Save the speech, Keller said. You two picked the wrong place to cause trouble tonight. The handcuffs clicked shut around Maya's wrists. The sound was small, almost delicate, but seemed to travel across the entire station. Naomi's eyes moved toward the store window. Behind the glass, Victor Hale stood near the coffee counter, pretending to study a newspaper while watching every movement outside. He was early. That was not part of the plan. Maya noticed him immediately, but she did not turn her head. She focused instead on the security camera above the pumps and the thin silver bracelet pressed against her wrist beneath the cuff. A tiny green light blinked once, confirming that the surveillance team was still receiving audio. Keller reached for the canvas bag. Naomi stepped forward. You should leave that where it is. Price shifted uneasily. There was something about her tone that did not fit the situation. She did not sound reckless or frightened. She sounded trained. Keller smiled as he lifted the bag from the pavement. Looks like we found what you were hiding. Inside were marked bills, sealed documents, and a small electronic device disguised as an old phone charger. To Keller, they looked like evidence of a crime. To the federal team parked less than a quarter-mile away, they were the final pieces of a case involving stolen identities, bribed officials, and families whose lives had been quietly dismantled. Imagine standing there while the person you came to arrest watched from behind warm glass, free to walk away because the officer wearing a badge had decided your skin told him everything he needed to know. Naomi glanced at Maya. One word from either of them could end the humiliation. One badge displayed beneath the canopy could bring federal vehicles racing into the lot. But revealing themselves too soon would warn Victor, and Victor was already moving toward the back door. The clock changed to 11:58. Keller placed the bag on the hood of his patrol car and reached for his radio. Dispatch, I've got 2 suspects detained at Red Hollow. Maya finally looked directly at him. Her expression was calm, but something in her eyes made Price take a step back. No, Officer Keller, she said quietly. You don't have 2 suspects. Across the highway, the lights inside a black surveillance van went dark. Victor's hand touched the rear exit. Maya glanced once more at the clock. 2 minutes remained. You just walked into a federal operation. 47 minutes earlier, the same gas station had looked almost peaceful beneath the pale glow of its canopy lights. Maya Brooks guided the faded gray sedan off the highway and into the lot, passing 6 fuel pumps, a row of darkened vending machines, and a handwritten sign advertising fresh coffee for $1.50. The rain had not started yet, but the air carried the metallic stillness that often came before a storm. Naomi Carter sat beside her with one hand resting near the canvas bag between her feet. To anyone watching, they looked like 2 sisters stopping for gas during a late drive. That was exactly what they were supposed to look like. We have 40 minutes, Naomi said, keeping her voice casual. Maya checked the rearview mirror before turning off the engine. A black utility van had parked across the highway beside an abandoned tire shop. Its windows were dark, its lights were off, and its license plate belonged to a heating repair company that did not exist. Inside, Special Agent in charge Marcus Reed and 4 members of the surveillance team were listening to every word. We do not have 40 minutes, Maya replied. We have 40 minutes if Victor follows the schedule. We have less if he changes it. Naomi glanced toward the convenience store. Behind the counter stood Victor Hale, a broad-shouldered man in a blue work shirt with the gas station logo stitched above his pocket. He was wiping the same section of counter again and again while watching the parking lot through the reflection in the glass. For 8 months, he had presented himself as a small business owner who worked late and knew every customer by name. Federal investigators believed the truth was very different. Stolen identification records moved through his office. Marked payments passed beneath his counter. Information about police patrols reached criminals before officers arrived. The gas station was not simply a business. It was a doorway, and tonight Maya and Naomi intended to walk through it. Naomi lifted the canvas bag. Still feels too light. It only needs to feel valuable, Maya said. The marked bills inside were real, but the documents beneath them contained carefully planted information designed to identify everyone who touched the network. Naomi stepped from the car and stretched as if she were tired from the road. Maya followed more slowly, studying the scene without appearing to study anything. One camera above the entrance, 2 cameras over the pumps, a rear door beside the ice freezer, a narrow service road disappearing behind the building. Victor had 3 ways out, but the federal team had covered all of them. Inside, Naomi ordered 2 coffees while Maya stood near a display of windshield fluid, listening to the quiet hum of the refrigerators. Long night? Victor asked. Long week, Naomi answered. She placed a folded receipt on the counter. It contained the agreed time, the amount, and a single sentence confirming the exchange. Victor read it without moving his lips. For 1 second, his expression changed. Not fear, recognition. Then a telephone vibrated beneath the counter. He looked down, and the color drained from his face. Maya saw it immediately. Someone had warned him. Outside, headlights appeared at the far end of the highway. A police cruiser turned toward the station nearly 20 minutes ahead of schedule. Maya lifted her coffee and spoke quietly into the transmitter hidden in her bracelet. Local law enforcement is early. Possible compromise. Victor looked toward the rear door. Naomi met Maya's eyes. The operation had just changed, and somewhere nearby, a person with a badge already knew too much. The cruiser rolled beneath the canopy and stopped beside pump number 4, its headlights washing over the windows of the convenience store. Victor Hale lowered his telephone so quickly that it struck the counter, and for the first time that night, the calm mask of a tired business owner slipped from his face. Maya watched him through the reflection on a refrigerator door. He was not surprised to see the police. He was relieved. That single reaction told her more than any recorded conversation had in 8 months. Naomi carried the 2 coffees toward the exit, keeping the canvas bag close to her side. He knows them, she said softly. Or he called them, Maya replied. Outside, Officer Ryan Keller stepped from the driver's side of the cruiser with the confidence of a man arriving somewhere he already understood. Officer Daniel Price followed more slowly, looking first at Victor, then at the gray sedan, then at the 2 women coming through the door. Keller did not ask whether anyone had reported a crime. He did not speak to the customers near the pumps. He walked directly toward Maya and Naomi. Evening, he said, although his tone held no welcome. Whose car is that? Maya glanced at the sedan. Ours. Keller looked toward the license plate, then back at her. Both of yours. It belongs to me, Maya answered. Is there a reason you are asking? The question was respectful, but Keller reacted as if respect itself were a challenge. Behind him, Victor remained inside the store, watching through the glass. Price noticed him and gave a brief nod. Victor did not return it. He was too focused on the bag in Naomi's hand. We received a report about suspicious activity, Keller said. Maya knew there had been no such report. The federal team was monitoring local dispatch, and no call had been made. What activity? Naomi asked. Keller looked her over, then looked at the canvas bag. You tell me. The air between them tightened. A truck passed on the highway, sending a low rush of sound across the wet pavement. Maya could hear Marcus read through the tiny receiver hidden near her collar. No dispatch record. Keller came on his own. Maya lifted her coffee as if taking a sip. Understood, she murmured. Keller stepped closer. What did you say? I said we stopped for coffee. Inside the store, Victor slowly reached beneath the counter. Maya could not see what he touched, but a moment later the lights in the back office went dark. He was erasing something, hiding something, or preparing to leave. Naomi saw it too. Her fingers tightened around the bag. The entire operation depended on Victor accepting the mark payment and carrying the planted documents into the network. Without that exchange, the federal case would remain incomplete. Keller pointed toward the sport utility vehicle parked near the air pump. You were seen standing near that vehicle. We were standing near our car, Naomi said. That is not what I heard. Maya looked past him toward Price. Who told you? Price hesitated. Keller answered before he could speak. I asked the questions here. That was the second mistake. The first had been arriving without a dispatch call. The second was protecting the source of his information. Maya now understood that the warning had not come from somewhere nearby. It had arrived in a police cruiser. Victor moved toward the rear hallway. The clock above the register read 11:21 p.m. 39 minutes remained until the scheduled exchange, but the plan was already collapsing. Maya met Naomi's eyes and gave the smallest possible nod. They would stay in character. They would let Keller believe he controlled the scene. Because sometimes the fastest way to expose a hidden alliance was to stop chasing it and allow it to reveal itself. Keller moved closer to the gray sedan and shined his flashlight through the passenger window, although the canopy lights already made everything inside clearly visible. 2 coffee cups sat in the center console. A folded highway map rested on the back seat. Nothing suggested a crime, but Keller studied the car as if suspicion could create evidence where none existed. Open the trunk, he said. Maya remained beside the driver door. Are we being detained? Keller turned toward her slowly. You ask a lot of questions for someone who says she has nothing to hide. Naomi felt the familiar heat of anger rise in her chest, but Maya gave her a brief glance. Stay calm. Stay in character. Let him speak. Across the parking lot, a family filling their minivan had stopped talking. A delivery driver near Pump 2 watched over the top of his receipt. No one stepped forward. No one knew what was really happening. To them, it was simply another late-night encounter between 2 black women and an officer who had already decided what he believed. Price walked around the sedan and looked through the rear window. His eyes paused on a small mark near the lower edge of the glass, a nearly invisible federal inventory symbol used on undercover vehicles. He leaned closer. Ryan, he said quietly, we should verify the registration before this goes any further. Keller did not look at him. I know what I am doing. Inside the store, Victor disappeared into the rear hallway. Maya saw the movement reflected in the dark glass of the entrance door. Marcus Reed spoke through a receiver. Victor is moving toward the service exit. Team 2 has eyes on him. Maya lifted one hand toward her hair, the signal to hold position. The mission had changed. Victor was no longer the only target. Keller had arrived without a call, defended an unnamed source, and now seemed determined to keep the 2 women occupied while Victor cleared the building. That pattern was too precise to be coincidence. The trunk, Keller repeated. Maya pressed the release button on her key. The trunk opened with a soft click. Keller lifted it and found an emergency blanket, a tire repair kit, 2 bottles of water, and a plain black case secure beneath a cargo net. His expression sharpened. What is in there? Personal equipment, Maya said. Open it. You do not have permission to search that case. Keller gave a cold smile. Then you can explain it at the station. Naomi shifted the canvas bag behind her leg. Keller noticed. His attention moved from the trunk to her hands. Put the bag down. It does not belong to you, Naomi said. I did not ask who it belongs to. Price looked toward the convenience store. Where is Hale? Keller's head turned too quickly. It lasted less than a second, but Maya caught it. So did Naomi. Keller knew exactly who Victor was. Maya stepped between Keller and the bag without appearing aggressive. Officer, you said someone reported suspicious activity. Was that person Victor Hale? The parking lot seemed to become silent. Keller's expression hardened. How do you know his name? Maya let the question hang between them. The refrigerator motors hummed inside the store. Rain began to touch the canopy in scattered drops. Victor had nearly reached the rear exit, but now Keller had revealed something more valuable than the exchange itself. He knew Victor. He was protecting Victor, and he had no idea that every word was being recorded. Keller reached for his handcuffs. "Turn around," he ordered. Naomi looked at Maya, waiting for the command that would end the operation. Maya did not give it. Instead, she placed her coffee on the hood of the sedan and slowly turned toward the flashing patrol lights. "Naomi," she said calmly, "do exactly what he says." Keller mistook her composure for surrender. Price did not. As the first cold drop of rain slid down the windshield, he stared at Maya and understood that the two women in front of him were not afraid of what was coming. They were waiting for it. Keller opened the handcuffs and secured Maya's wrists behind her back while the rain grew steadier against the canopy. Naomi watched every movement, her jaw tight, but she followed Maya's instruction and remained still. Keller interpreted their restraint as submission. Price saw something else. Maya adjusted her stance before the cuffs closed, protecting the transmitter beneath her silver bracelet without looking down. Naomi shifted the canvas bag away from the nearest puddle, preserving the marked bills and documents inside. Neither movement was accidental. Neither woman behaved like someone surprised by police procedure. "Your turn," Keller said to Naomi. "Set the bag on the hood and place your hands behind you." Naomi looked toward the rear of the convenience store. Victor Hale had disappeared from view, but the service door was still closed. Federal agents were positioned beyond it, waiting for Maya's signal. If Victor stepped outside carrying the hidden records, they could arrest him with direct evidence. If Keller frightened him into abandoning everything, 8 months of work could disappear before midnight. Naomi placed the bag on the patrol car. Price secured her hands carefully, then lowered his voice. "Is there something you need to tell us?" Naomi met his eyes. "There are several things you need to understand." Keller pulled the bag open before she could continue. He removed the marked cash, the sealed envelopes, and the electronic device disguised as a charger. His expression brightened with the confidence of a man who believed the evidence had confirmed his assumptions. "That is a lot of money for 2 people stopping for coffee." Maya turned her head slightly. "How much were you expecting?" Keller's smile vanished. "What is that supposed to mean? You arrived without a dispatch call. You came directly to us. You knew about the bag before you searched it. I'm asking how much money you expected to find." Price looked at Keller. For one quiet second, the only sound was rain running from the edge of the canopy. Keller placed the cash on the hood. "I do not have to explain myself to you." "No," Maya said, "but you may have to explain yourself to someone else." Inside the black surveillance van across the highway, every word was being recorded. Marcus Reed listened as technicians compared Keller's voice with earlier intercepted calls connected to Victor's network. The match was not yet complete, but Maya did not need confirmation. She was building it in real time. Keller lifted one of the sealed envelopes. "What is in this?" "You should ask Victor," Maya replied. Price turned toward the store. "Why would Hale know?" Keller interrupted immediately. "Stop talking to them." That reaction told Price more than any answer could have. He looked through the window and saw movement behind the back office door. A shadow crossed the narrow hallway. Victor was still inside, still listening, still deciding whether to run. Maya watched Keller carefully. "Did Victor tell you we would be here?" "I said stop talking." "Did he tell you what time we were arriving?" Keller stepped closer, lowering his voice. "You two came into the wrong place, carrying the wrong bag. And now you're trying to act smarter than everyone around you." Naomi's telephone rested on the patrol car beside the money, its cracked screen dark. Keller believed it was inactive. In reality, it was transmitting his words, his face, and the contents of the bag directly to the federal command van. "People like you always think there is some explanation that changes what I can see," Keller continued. Maya did not react. Naomi did not look away. Price did. His eyes dropped toward the pavement as the meaning of Keller's words settled over the scene. This was no longer a routine detention, and it had never been one. Keller had arrived with a conclusion, not a question. Maya glanced at the digital clock inside the store. It read 11:34 p.m., 26 minutes remained before the scheduled exchange. Victor's shadow moved toward the rear exit again. Maya pressed her thumb against the hidden switch beneath her bracelet, sending a silent instruction to the waiting team. Hold position. Record everything. Let him keep talking. Keller believed the handcuffs had taken away their control. He did not understand that every biased assumption, every unexplained detail, and every nervous glance toward Victor was tightening a different kind of restraint around him. At 11:36 p.m., Marcus Reed's voice reached Maya through the receiver hidden beneath her collar. "We can move now. Give the signal." Maya looked through the convenience store window and saw Victor's shadow pause near the rear exit. He carried something rectangular beneath his jacket, most likely the encrypted drive the team had spent months trying to locate. If the federal agents entered too soon, Victor could drop it, destroy it, or claim it had never belonged to him. If they waited too long, Keller might place Maya and Naomi in the cruiser and drive away with the marked money. The choice was simple only from a distance. Save the operation, or save themselves from a detention that should never have happened. Maya pressed her thumb against the bracelet twice. "Hold!" Naomi recognized the signal and lowered her eyes toward the canvas bag. Keller mistook the movement for concern. "Thinking about what is inside?" he asked. "I'm thinking about why you are more interested in this bag than the man leaving through the back door," Naomi replied. Price turned sharply toward the store. "Someone is leaving?" Keller stepped between him and the window. "Stay focused." "On what?" Price asked. "You said this came from Dispatch, but Dispatch has not contacted us once." Keller's expression tightened. The rain fell harder now, drumming against the canopy and running in silver lines down the patrol car windows. The family in the minivan had finished fueling but remained inside, watching. The delivery driver had moved beneath the store awning, his receipt forgotten in his hand. Witnesses were gathering without realizing they had become witnesses. Maya spoke calmly. "Officer Keller, when did Victor tell you about the exchange?" Keller gave a short laugh. "You're not going to confuse me with some story. Then answer the question." "I do not know anything about an exchange." "You knew there would be cash. Anyone could see what was in that bag." Naomi looked at the closed canvas bag on the hood. "You mentioned the money before you opened it." Silence followed. Price stared at Keller. Across the highway, technicians inside the surveillance van marked the statement and replayed the earlier audio. Keller looked toward Victor's office, then quickly looked away. Maya continued before he could recover. "Did Victor also tell you the drive would be moved before midnight?" Keller responded without thinking. "The drive is not supposed to leave the building until after the payment." The words landed softly, but everything changed. Price's face went still. Naomi lifted her eyes. Inside the surveillance van, Marcus Reed stopped speaking. Keller had just repeated a detail that had never appeared in any local report, warrant, or briefing. Only Victor, the federal team, and the person protecting him could have known it. Keller realized his mistake 1 second too late. "That is not what I meant." Maya turned enough to face him. "What did you mean?" "I heard something earlier." "From whom?" "A confidential source." "Victor Hale." Keller reached for his radio, but Price placed a hand over the microphone before he could transmit. It was not an act of force. It was a question made physical. "Ryan," Price said, his voice barely carrying above the rain, "how did you know about the drive?" Keller looked at his partner, then at Maya, then toward the rear door where Victor was beginning to emerge. For the first time, certainty left his face. Maya pressed her thumb once against the bracelet. "Prepare." Federal engines quietly started across the highway. Victor stepped into the rain with a rectangular drive hidden beneath his coat. Keller had believed the handcuffs would prevent Maya and Naomi from controlling the moment. Instead, they had given him enough confidence to expose the truth himself. The clock above the register changed to 11:39 p.m. 21 minutes remained before midnight, but the operation no longer needed to wait for the scheduled exchange. The payment had not trapped Victor. Keller's own words had trapped them both. Victor Hale stepped from the rear door with his coat pulled tightly around the rectangular drive, but he stopped when the gas station lights suddenly went dark. For one breath, the entire property disappeared into rain and shadow. Then the emergency lights came on, casting a dim amber glow across the pumps. Engines started beyond the highway. Doors opened. black federal vehicles entered from both sides of the station and blocked every exit without a horn, a shout, or a wasted movement. Victor looked toward Keller, expecting help. Keller only stared back, his radio still covered by Price's hand. "Federal agents," a voice announced through the rain. "Remain where you are." Marcus Reed walked beneath the canopy wearing a dark raincoat, his credentials held clearly against his chest. More agents moved into position near the store, the service road, and the fuel pumps. No one rushed. No one needed to. The operation had already closed around the station. Keller looked from Marcus to Maya and Naomi, then down at the handcuffs around their wrists. His face lost its color. Marcus stopped several feet away. "Officer Price, remove the restraints from Special Agent Maya Brooks and Special Agent Naomi Carter." Price stood frozen for half a second. "Special agents?" "Federal investigators assigned to an active undercover operation," Marcus said. "Remove the restraints." Price immediately unlocked Naomi's cuffs, then Maya's. Maya rubbed one wrist once and adjusted the silver bracelet that had carried every word to the surveillance team. Naomi reached for her telephone on the patrol car. The cracked screen lit beneath her fingers, showing a live recording that had never stopped. Keller stared at it. "You recorded me?" Maya faced him calmly. "You recorded yourself." Near the rear door, two agents approached Victor and instructed him to place the drive on a nearby utility table. Victor obeyed, his eyes moving desperately toward Keller. That look erased the last space for doubt. Marcus turned to Keller. "Officer Ryan Keller, you are being detained for suspected obstruction of a federal investigation, unlawful disclosure of protected information, and participation in a bribery network under investigation by the United States government." Keller shook his head. "This is a mistake. I was responding to suspicious activity." "There was no dispatch call," Price said quietly. Keller looked at his partner as if betrayal had arrived from the wrong direction. Price continued, his voice unsteady but clear. "You knew about the cash. You knew about the drive. You knew Victor Hale was here before we arrived." Rain ran from the edge of the canopy between them like a curtain. The customers who had watched in silence now understood that the women standing beside the gray sedan had never been helpless. They had been measuring every word, preserving every detail, and waiting for the truth to identify itself. Keller looked at Maya. "Why did you let this continue?" "Because we needed to know who warned Victor," she answered. "And because you needed to believe we had no power before you showed us how you use yours." Marcus directed another agent to secure the marked cash, the sealed documents, and Naomi's recording device. The evidence was photographed exactly where Keller had placed it. Victor lowered his head. Keller remained silent. Less than 3 minutes earlier, he had believed the handcuffs proved that he controlled the scene. Now those same cuffs rested open on the hood of his patrol car, while two black federal agents stood before him with the authority he had refused to imagine. Maya looked toward the clock inside the store. It read 11:42 p.m. Midnight had not arrived, but for Keller and Victor, the reckoning already had. By 12:15 a.m., the gas station had become a quiet field of evidence. Federal agents photographed the marked bills, sealed the drive recovered from Victor Hale, and copied every second of Naomi Carter's recording. The customers who had witnessed the detention were asked to remain long enough to provide statements, and each account described the same pattern. Ryan Keller had arrived without a dispatch call. He had ignored every reasonable question. He had treated Maya Brooks and Naomi as guilty before he knew their names. Most importantly, he had revealed information that only someone inside Victor's network could have known. Keller stood near the patrol car while an agent read the terms of his detention. The certainty that had shaped his voice earlier was gone. Victor sat inside a separate federal vehicle, staring through the rain-streaked window as technicians confirmed that the drive contained payment records, stolen identities, and a list of local officials who had accepted money in exchange for protection. Officer Daniel Price remained beneath the canopy, his uniform darkened by rain, watching the case expand around him. Maya approached without anger, but her calm made it impossible for him to hide behind excuses. "How long did you know something was wrong?" she asked. Price looked toward Keller, then lowered his eyes. I knew he handled certain calls differently. He would change patrol routes without explaining why. Reports disappeared. Complaints were rewritten. I told myself it was poor judgment, not corruption. Naomi stepped beside Maya. And when he treated people unfairly? Price took a slow breath. I saw that too. The admission sounded smaller than the harm behind it. I never joined him, Price said. Maya held his gaze. Silence does not make you innocent. It only means someone else carries the cost of what you refuse to stop. Price did not argue. He reached into the cruiser and removed a key from a locked compartment beneath the dashboard. He explained that Keller maintained a private storage cabinet at the precinct containing duplicate reports, confiscated telephones, and notebooks that never entered official evidence. He had noticed the cabinet months earlier, but had never reported it. Now he offered the key to Marcus Reed and agreed to provide a complete statement. Before sunrise, federal investigators entered the precinct with a warrant. The cabinet contained records tied to wrongful stops, unexplained property seizures, and payments routed through businesses connected to Victor. Some victims had filed complaints that were dismissed. Others had remained silent because they believed no one would listen. The investigation was no longer about one compromised sting operation. It had become a review of every arrest Keller had influenced during the previous 6 years. Marcus informed Maya that Price would cooperate formally and testify before a federal grand jury. Naomi watched Price sign the first statement at a folding table inside the store. "Do you think he deserves another chance?" she asked quietly. Maya looked through the window at the open handcuffs still resting on the patrol car hood. "A second chance is not the same as freedom from consequences," she said. "He will have to earn trust from the people his silence failed." As dawn began to soften the sky above the highway, agents escorted Keller and Victor away in separate vehicles. There was no celebration, no triumphantaplos, only the steady work of collecting truth, one document and one testimony at a time. Maya knew that powerful people often expected justice to arrive with noise, but real accountability was quieter. It came through records that could not be erased, witnesses who finally spoke, and a system forced to look directly at the people it had ignored. 3 weeks later, Maya Brooks and Naomi Carter returned to the Red Hollow gas station beneath a clear morning sky. The yellow evidence tape had been removed, but the business remained closed, its windows covered from the inside, and its fuel pumps locked beneath red inspection tags. Highway traffic passed without slowing, unaware that a quiet roadside stop had exposed years of corruption hidden behind routine reports and familiar uniforms. Naomi stood beside pump number 6 and looked down at her wrist. The bruising had faded, leaving only a thin mark where the handcuff had rested. "It feels smaller in daylight," she said. Maya looked toward the convenience store. Places usually do after the truth comes out. The investigation had grown far beyond Victor Hale and Ryan Keller. Federal auditors had reopened 37 complaints connected to Keller's patrol history. Property had been returned to several families. Records once labeled incomplete were restored from private files found inside his locked cabinet. 3 local officials had resigned, and 2 more were under formal investigation. Officer Daniel Price had testified before a federal grand jury and admitted every moment when he had chosen loyalty to a partner over responsibility to the public. His cooperation mattered, but did not erase his silence. The department placed him on administrative leave while an independent board reviewed his conduct. Naomi walked toward the faded gray sedan, now cleared from evidence. Marcus Reed had left a small sealed package on the hood. Maya opened it and removed the pair of handcuffs Keller had used that night. A white evidence label carried the date, location, and case number. Naomi stared at them for a long moment. "We had a transmitter, a surveillance team, and federal authority," she said. "What happens to someone who has none of that?" Maya turned the cuffs in her hands. The metal caught the morning light, ordinary and almost harmless in appearance. That is the question this case has to answer. They had both read the newly recovered complaints. A college student stopped while driving home. A nurse questioned outside the hospital after a late shift. A father detained near his own apartment because someone claimed he looked unfamiliar. None had possessed a hidden badge. None had known that cameras were recording. Some had spent years wondering whether anyone believed them. Maya placed the handcuffs inside a new evidence bag. We were not protected because the system worked, she said. We were protected because people were listening on the other end. Justice means building a system that listens before someone has to prove they are important. Naomi looked across the highway at the abandoned tire shop where the surveillance van had waited in darkness. On that night, Keller had seen two black women and decided their appearance was enough to define them. Their calm had offended him. Their questions had threatened him. Their dignity had become evidence in a story he had written before speaking to them. Yet the truth had required no raised voices and no revenge. It had only required patience, witnesses, and a record that could not be rewritten. Maya sealed the evidence bag and placed it in the trunk. Before closing it, she looked once more at the station. "You believe his badge placed him above us," Naomi said. Maya nodded. "But a badge only carries the honor of the person wearing it." She closed the trunk, and the sound echoed across the empty lot. Keller had believed power meant deciding who belonged, who deserved respect, and whose explanation mattered. In the end, the two women he dismissed had shown him what authority could never replace. Truth did not need his permission. Dignity did not depend on his approval. And justice, when it finally arrived, recognized every person he had refused to see.